Hey everyone, I've been lurking here for a while, but I never thought I'd be posting. I guess I'm looking for advice, or maybe just a way to make sense of the mess my life has become. My name is Luke 34, and up until last month, I thought my wife, Amanda 32, and I had a pretty good marriage. I was wrong. Amanda and I have been married for 8 years. We don't have kids, but we always talked about starting a family someday. She's outgoing, fun, and ambitious. Everything I fell in love with when we met at a mutual friend's party. I'm more grounded, the type to focus on stability and keeping things running smoothly. I thought we balanced each other out perfectly. But looking back, I can see the cracks that were forming long before everything fell apart. It started about 6 months ago. Amanda began acting different. At first, it was small things, like how she'd suddenly spend hours getting ready before leaving the house, even if it was just to meet a friend for coffee. She started going out more often. Dinners, happy hours, girls' nights. Things she hadn't done much in the past. I didn't think much of it. Amanda had always been social, and her work as a marketing manager meant she was constantly networking. I figured it was just part of her personality. But then there was the phone. Amanda used to leave it lying around, but now she wouldn't let it out of her sight. She'd angle it away when texting, and any time I walked into the room, she'd lock the screen. When I asked her about it, she rolled her eyes and said, "God, Luke, don't be so paranoid. It's work stuff." She always had an excuse, and every time I brought up my concerns, she'd brush me off. "You're imagining things," she'd say, or "I'm just stressed. Can't I have my own space?" I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust her, but something in my gut told me something was wrong. The tipping point came one night after dinner. We were sitting on the couch, watching TV, when Amanda suddenly said, "Luke, we need to talk." The tone in her voice immediately made my stomach drop. I muted the TV and turned to face her. "I've been thinking a lot about us," she said, staring at her hands instead of looking at me. "I feel like I've been missing out on experiences. You know, things I should have done before we got married." I frowned. "What are you talking about?" She finally looked up, and her expression was cold, almost calculating. "I want to start seeing other people, just for a while, to figure out what I really want." I blinked, stunned. "You're joking, right?" "No," she said, her tone sharp now. "I've been thinking about this for a long time. I still want us to stay together, but I also want the freedom to explore. You know, with other men." My chest tightened, and I struggled to process her words. "You're saying you want an open marriage? After 8 years of being monogamous?" "It's not about what we've been," Amanda said, her voice growing impatient. "It's about what I need now. I'm not asking for permission, Luke. I'm telling you how it's going to be." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. "So you're just going to sleep with other people? And what? Expect me to sit here and wait for you?" She shrugged, her expression infuriatingly indifferent. "We can still be intimate. I don't see why this has to change everything." I stared at her, my mind racing. The woman sitting in front of me didn't feel like the Amanda I'd fallen in love with. This Amanda was cold, dismissive, and completely unapologetic. "Do you even care how I feel about this?" I asked. Amanda sighed, leaning back on the couch. "Luke, this isn't about you. It's about me. And if you can't handle it, that's your problem." That night, I barely slept. My mind was a hurricane of anger, hurt, and disbelief. I couldn't wrap my head around how Amanda could say those things so casually, like our marriage didn't matter. But what hurt the most was how little she seemed to care about how this would affect me. She wasn't asking for compromise or understanding. She was demanding I accept something that went against everything I believed in. The next day, while Amanda was at work, I made a decision. If Amanda wanted to explore other experiences, I wasn't going to stick around to watch her tear our marriage apart. I packed my things, clothes, personal items, and a few sentimental keepsakes, and loaded them into my car. Before leaving, I logged into our joint bank account and transferred the majority of the funds into a private account I'd opened that morning. I left just enough for her to cover immediate expenses, but the rest was mine. Then I wrote a note. "Amanda, you made your choice. and now I'm making mine. I won't stick around to be your backup plan while you explore. I'm taking what's mine, and I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. Luke. I left the note on the kitchen counter, locked the door behind me, and drove away without looking back. I didn't look back. As I drove away, a strange calm settled over me, a mix of relief and quiet rage. Amanda thought she could shatter our marriage and expect me to just sit there and take it? Not a chance. If she wanted to explore her so-called freedom, she could do it without me. I checked into a motel on the outskirts of town, turning off my phone to avoid her inevitable calls and texts. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. The fallout came fast. The next morning, I turned my phone back on to find a flood of missed calls and messages from Amanda. The first few were predictable. Where are you? Why is the house empty? Call me right now, Luke. Then came the ones dripping with fury. How dare you steal our money? You're a coward, running away instead of talking to me like a man. You think this is funny? You'll regret this. I didn't reply to a single one. Let her stew in it. Amanda wasn't used to being ignored, and I knew it would drive her insane. By the third day, the messages shifted again. This time, they were pleading. Luke, please, let's talk. I didn't mean for it to come out like that. I still love you. We can work through this. I'm sorry, okay? Just come home. But I wasn't falling for her manipulations. She had made it crystal clear where her priorities lay, and they weren't with me or our marriage. This was a woman who wanted her cake, and to eat it too. Not anymore. That weekend, I got a call from Ryan, 35, a close friend who lived a few blocks away. Dude, he said, his voice low. I don't know what's going on, but Amanda's been telling everyone you abandoned her. She's acting like you're the bad guy. I laughed bitterly. Of course she is. Did she mention why I left? No, Ryan said. Just some vague crap about you being too controlling. But here's the thing. She was at the bar last night, hanging all over some guy. My stomach tightened. What did he look like? I asked. Tall, dark hair, wearing a suit. They left together around midnight, Ryan said. I thought you should know. Hearing that stung, but it didn't surprise me. Amanda had already emotionally checked out of our marriage, and now she was proving it physically. Still, I couldn't help but feel a pang of anger. Less than a week after I left, and she was already flaunting her newfound freedom? Fine, two could play that game. That Monday, I paid a visit to a lawyer. I explained the situation in detail, Amanda's announcement, her dismissive attitude, and my decision to leave. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Sarah, listened carefully before leaning back in her chair. She's going to fight you on this, Sarah said, especially when it comes to the money. But based on what you've told me, you have the upper hand. Her behavior is erratic, and if you can prove infidelity, it'll strengthen your case for divorce. Infidelity? I asked. She admitted she wanted to sleep with other men, but we were still technically together. Does that count? If she's already acting on it, then yes, Sarah said. We'll need proof. Are you willing to go that far? I didn't hesitate. Absolutely. That's when I hired a private investigator. His name was Tom, and he came highly recommended by Sarah. This won't take long, Tom said when I explained the situation. Women like her are predictable. Within days, Tom had results. Amanda wasn't just seeing one guy. She was juggling multiple friends. There were photos, timestamps, even screenshots of her using dating apps while still pretending to be the victim in public. The photos made my stomach churn. Amanda laughing with a man at a fancy restaurant, her hand resting on his arm. Amanda leaving a hotel with another guy, her face smug and carefree. Every image was a dagger, but it also fueled my resolve. The next step in my plan was equal parts strategic and petty. Amanda had always prided herself on her reputation, both professionally and socially. She worked in marketing and had cultivated an image of being the perfect, driven woman. That image was about to crack. Through Ryan, I leaked just enough information to a few mutual friends. Nothing explicit, just hints that Amanda wasn't the person she pretended to be. The news spread like wildfire. Within days, Amanda was calling me again, her messages alternating between rage and desperation. "You're ruining my life, look," she screamed in one voicemail. "You don't get to destroy me just because you're bitter." But it wasn't bitterness driving me, it was justice. Amanda had thrown me under the bus, humiliated me, and tried to rewrite the narrative. Now, she was reaping what she'd sown. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. With Tom's evidence in hand, Sarah assured me we had a solid case. Amanda's infidelity, combined with her erratic behavior, would give me the upper hand in negotiations. When Amanda was served the papers, she showed up at my motel, pounding on the door. I opened it just enough to see her face, twisted with fury. "You think you're so clever," she spat. "Taking the money, hiring a PI? You're disgusting." "No, Amanda," I said calmly. "What's disgusting is lying to someone who trusted you. Enjoy your freedom. You've earned it." I shut the door in her face, her screams muffled as I locked it behind me. If Amanda was furious before, getting served divorce papers sent her into overdrive. She wasn't used to losing, and the fact that I'd taken the initiative made her even more unhinged. Over the next few days, her calls and messages became relentless. One minute, she was apologetic and tearful. The next, she was spitting venom. "Look, please, let's just talk. We can work this out. You're a coward for running away. What kind of man does this? You're going to regret this, you selfish piece of **T. I ignored all of it, forwarding the more hostile messages to Sarah, my lawyer. Amanda didn't seem to realize that every nasty voicemail and threatening text was just more evidence for my case. One evening, while I was sitting in my motel room, I got a call from Ryan. "Hey man, you're not going to believe this," he said, his voice low. "Amanda showed up at my house." "What?" I said, sitting up. "Why?" "She said she needed someone to talk to, but it was weird. She started ranting about you, how you ruined her life, and how she didn't deserve this. Then she tried to get me to back her up in court." I felt a surge of anger. "She's trying to turn you against me?" "Yeah," Ryan said, "but it gets worse. She started getting flirty, like really flirty. When I didn't take the bait, she straight up told me she'd make it worth my while if I sided with her." I clenched my fists. Amanda's shamelessness knew no bounds. "What did you say?" "I told her to leave before I called the cops," Ryan said. "But I thought you should know. She's desperate, man." "Thanks for telling me," I said, my jaw tight. "I'll handle it." The next day, Amanda escalated her campaign of chaos. I got a call from the bank, informing me that she tried to file a dispute over the funds I'd transferred. She claimed I'd stolen them, conveniently leaving out the fact that they were from our joint account. Thankfully, my lawyer had already anticipated this move and provided the bank with documentation proving I was entitled to the money. Then came the rumors. Amanda started spreading lies about me to our mutual friends, painting herself as the victim. She told people I'd abandoned her without warning, emptied our account, and was refusing to let her move on. A few people reached out to me, confused and concerned. When I shared the real story, complete with receipts, most of them sided with me. Amanda's carefully curated image was crumbling, and she couldn't stand it. But Amanda wasn't done yet. One night, I returned to my motel room to find the door ajar. My heart raced as I stepped inside, only to find the place trashed. My clothes were scattered, drawers were pulled open, and the few personal items I'd brought were smashed. On the mirror, written in bright red lipstick, were the words, "You can't hide forever." I immediately called the police and reported the break-in. While I couldn't prove it was Amanda, I had my suspicions. Sarah added the incident to our growing file of evidence, warning me to stay vigilant. A week later, the private investigator, Tom, called with new findings. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Amanda's seeing someone who works at the same firm as your lawyer." "What?" I said, stunned. "She's been spotted meeting up with a paralegal from Sarah's firm," Tom explained. "I don't think it's a coincidence. She's trying to gather intel." I felt a mix of disbelief and rage. Amanda was crossing every line, And now she was trying to undermine my legal team? It was time to turn the tables. The next day, I met with Sarah and shared Tom's findings. She was furious but composed. "This could actually work in our favor," she said. "If we can prove she's attempting to manipulate the case, it'll destroy her credibility." We decided to let Amanda dig her own grave. Meanwhile, I worked with Tom to gather more evidence of her erratic behavior. It didn't take long. Within days, he sent me photos of Amanda at a bar, openly flirting with multiple men. Behavior that clashed starkly with the wronged wife persona she was trying to sell. The tipping point came when Amanda showed up unannounced at my motel. I heard the pounding on the door and her voice, loud and slurred, demanding I let her in. "You're such a coward, Luke," she shouted. "You think you can just leave me like this?" I called the police, keeping the chain locked as I recorded her meltdown on my phone. When the officers arrived, Amanda tried to spin the situation, claiming I'd invited her over and then trapped her outside. But the recording told a different story. She was issued a formal warning and escorted off the property. That night, I sat down and wrote Amanda an email. It was short, direct, and icy. "Amanda, your behavior has been erratic and destructive, and it's only solidifying my decision to move forward with the divorce. Every action you've taken, from the false rumors to the break-in, has been documented and shared with my legal team. I suggest you stop digging before you bury yourself completely. Luke." I sent it and blocked her number, feeling a sense of finality I hadn't felt before. Amanda had shown me exactly who she was, and I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. If I thought Amanda's antics couldn't get any worse, I was sorely mistaken. Her desperation to regain control pushed her to new lows, and this time, she didn't just come for me. She came for someone I cared about. A few days after sending her that email, I got a call from Ryan. He sounded tense, like he was holding back anger. "Luke, you're not going to believe this," he said. "Amanda's been talking to Emily. Emily is Ryan's wife and someone I've always been close with. She's smart, kind, and has been like a sister to me for years." Hearing Amanda's name in the same sentence as hers immediately put me on edge. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She told Emily that you've been lying about the whole situation," Ryan explained. "She said you're manipulating everyone and that you've been seeing another woman behind her back. She even had the nerve to say you drained the account to spend it on your mistress." My stomach dropped. Amanda was trying to poison one of the few friendships I had left. "What did Emily say?" I asked, dreading the answer. "She didn't believe her," Ryan said. "But still, the fact that Amanda is willing to drag her into this, it's messed up, man." I thanked him for letting me know, but inside, I was seething. Amanda wasn't just spreading lies. She was targeting people she knew would get back to me. It wasn't enough for her to try to destroy me. She wanted to isolate me too. At this point, the divorce proceedings were in full swing, and I knew we were heading for a courtroom showdown. Amanda had hired her own lawyer, someone flashy and aggressive who clearly loved drama as much as she did. She was trying to play the victim, claiming that I'd blindsided her, stolen her money, and abandoned her without cause. What Amanda didn't know was that my lawyer, Sarah, had been meticulously building a rock-solid case. Between the private investigator's evidence, her threatening messages, and the incident at my motel, we had a mountain of proof to counter her lies. But Sarah wasn't done yet. She had a surprise up her sleeve. The court date arrived, and walking into that courtroom felt surreal. Amanda sat on one side, dressed to the nines and wearing an expression that screamed false confidence. Her lawyer smirked as if he'd already won. But I wasn't intimidated. I knew what was coming. Amanda went first, delivering a tearful testimony about how I'd abandoned her and financially ruined her life. She painted herself as a devoted wife blindsided by my selfish actions. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. When it was my turn, Sarah calmly laid out the evidence. The photos of Amanda with other men, the messages she'd sent admitting she wanted to explore, and the footage of her meltdown at my motel all painted a very different picture. But the real bombshell came when Sarah revealed that Amanda had been trying to manipulate someone inside her own legal firm. "Your Honor," Sarah said, handing over a document. "We have proof that Mrs. Taylor attempted to solicit confidential information from one of our paralegals. This behavior not only demonstrates her lack of credibility, but also constitutes an ethical violation." Amanda's face went pale, and for the first time, her lawyer looked visibly shaken. The judge wasn't impressed either. He leaned forward, glaring at Amanda. "Mrs. Taylor, this is a serious allegation. Do you have a response?" Amanda stammered, trying to deny it, but the evidence was undeniable. The judge ordered a recess to review everything, and by the time we returned, it was clear who the court believed. The ruling was decisive. The judge granted me the majority of the assets, including the funds in our joint account, and awarded Amanda minimal alimony based on her erratic behavior and clear attempts at manipulation. As for her request for compensation for emotional damages, it was outright denied. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt a sense of vindication I hadn't experienced before. Amanda had tried to destroy me, but in the end, her lies had been her undoing. But I wasn't done yet. That evening, I logged into social media and posted a simple but pointed message. Truth always comes out. Some people should be more careful about the bridges they burn. I didn't name names, but the message was clear enough for anyone who knew the situation. The reaction was immediate. Mutual friends started reaching out, offering support and sharing stories about Amanda's behavior. It was like a dam had broken, and everyone who had been biting their tongue finally felt free to speak. Meanwhile, Amanda's reputation took a nosedive. Her attempts to play the victim fell flat, especially after word spread about her antics during the divorce. She lost friends, professional connections, and the polished image she'd worked so hard to maintain. But my final act of revenge was more personal. Amanda had always been obsessed with appearances. She cared deeply about how others saw her, which was why she'd gone to such lengths to smear my name. So, with Sarah's help, I sent her a legal notice, a formal request to reimburse me for damages caused by her behavior, including the cost of the private investigator, repairs for the vandalism, and my motel stay. The amount wasn't small, and while I didn't expect her to pay it, the gesture was enough. Amanda knew she'd lost, and now she was being reminded of it in a way she couldn't ignore. After the courtroom loss and my final legal notice, Amanda disappeared for a while. The silence was unsettling. I knew she wouldn't just accept defeat. She never had before. But in the meantime, I focused on rebuilding my life. For the first time in years, I felt free. The quiet didn't last long. A month later, I started hearing whispers from mutual acquaintances. Amanda was spinning a new narrative, this time targeting my character in a way that was harder to disprove outright. "She's telling people you ruined her career," Ryan said during one of our catch-ups. "Apparently, she's claiming that you made it impossible for her to work in marketing again." I shook my head, incredulous. "How? By leaving her after she decided to sleep around? That's her excuse?" Ryan shrugged. "You know how she is. She's saying you spread rumors that cost her clients, that you've been vindictive." It was frustrating, but I wasn't about to let her pull me back into her chaos. "Let her talk," I said. "The people who believe her aren't worth keeping around anyway." The next blow came when Amanda posted a long, emotional rant on social media. She painted herself as a misunderstood victim, claiming I'd smeared her reputation and turned everyone against her. The post quickly gained traction, with her friends commenting words of support. I resisted the urge to respond publicly. Instead, I called Sarah, my lawyer. "Does this count as defamation?" I asked, sending her screenshots. Sarah was calm as always. "Technically, no. It's vague enough that it doesn't directly accuse you of anything provable. But don't worry, this kind of behavior always backfires eventually." Meanwhile, I focused on my own life. I had moved out of the motel and into a new apartment closer to my office. It wasn't flashy, but it was mine. I started hitting the gym again, something I hadn't done in years, and even reconnected with a few old friends. Slowly but surely, I was finding myself again. But Amanda wasn't done yet. One evening, I came home to find a handwritten note slipped under my door. The sight of her loopy handwriting made my stomach churn. Luke, I've been thinking about us a lot. I know I made mistakes, but I still believe we can fix things. I'm starting therapy and working on myself. Please, let's talk. Amanda. I stared at the note, a mix of anger and disbelief coursing through me. After everything she'd done, cheating, lying, manipulating, she still thought she could reel me back in? I didn't respond. I shredded the note and threw it away, determined not to give her another ounce of my energy. But Amanda wasn't giving up that easily. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Tom, the private investigator. Luke, you're not going to like this, he said. Amanda's been asking around about your new apartment. What? I said, my grip tightening on the phone. She's trying to find out where you live. A friend of hers works in real estate and mentioned your building. I figured you'd want a heads up. My chest tightened. Amanda had no reason to know where I lived. No reason to insert herself back into my life. What should I do? I asked. Get a restraining order, Tom said without hesitation. You've already got enough evidence to support it. I followed his advice, filing for a restraining order the next day. When Amanda was served, her reaction was as dramatic as expected. She sent me a string of emails, alternating between pleading and raging. You didn't have to do this, Luke. We could have worked things out. A restraining order? Really? You're pathetic. You'll regret treating me like this. Once again, I forwarded everything to Sarah and blocked her email address. Amanda's ability to spin reality was almost impressive, but I wasn't playing her games anymore. A week later, Ryan called me with some surprising news. Guess what? He said, laughing. Amanda's trying to launch a YouTube channel. What? I said, baffled. Yeah, some kind of lifestyle advice thing. She's branding herself as a survivor of toxic relationships. I couldn't help but laugh. The idea of Amanda giving anyone advice was beyond absurd. Good luck to her, I guess, I said. Maybe she'll find a way to monetize her lies. While Amanda spiraled, I continued to move forward. I started seeing someone new, a coworker named Hannah. She was kind, grounded, and completely different from Amanda. We took things slow, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe in a relationship. There were no games, no manipulations, just two people getting to know each other. But Amanda wasn't done trying to meddle. One day, I got a call from Ryan's wife, Emily. Amanda's been messaging me again, she said, sounding frustrated. She's claiming she wants to make amends, but honestly, I think she's fishing for information about you. I sighed. Block her. She's not worth your time. I already did, Emily said. Just thought you should know. She's clearly not over this. Despite her efforts, Amanda's life continued to unravel. Her YouTube channel flopped, her social circle dwindled, and her attempts to regain control fell flat. Meanwhile, I was thriving, rebuilding my life piece by piece, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. Months passed, and I started to believe that Amanda was finally fading out of my life for good. Her attempts to smear my name had fallen flat, her YouTube venture had bombed, and most of our mutual friends had distanced themselves from her drama. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life. But, as I should have known, Amanda wasn't done yet. One Friday evening, I was at dinner with Hannah when my phone buzzed. It was Ryan, and his tone was urgent. Luke, Amanda's gone completely off the rails. She's been telling people she's taking you to court for slander. I rolled my eyes. She's got nothing to stand on. What could she possibly sue me for? Apparently, she's claiming you've been spreading lies about her to ruin her career, Ryan explained. She even mentioned filing a police report. It was laughable, but it also set me on edge. Amanda was grasping at straws, and I had no doubt she was desperate enough to try something reckless. A week later, her next move arrived, this time in the form of a process server. I opened my door to find a man holding an envelope. Luke Evans, he asked. Yes, I said warily. You've been served. I took the envelope and opened it to find a lawsuit. Amanda was suing me for defamation, claiming that my actions had caused her to lose clients and suffer emotional distress. It was absurd, but it was also infuriating. Amanda wasn't just trying to punish me. She was trying to drag me back into her chaos. I called Sarah immediately. "She's suing me," I said, barely able to contain my anger. Sarah sighed. "I was expecting this. Don't worry, Luke. We'll handle it. She doesn't have a leg to stand on." True to her word, Sarah got to work dismantling Amanda's claims. She subpoenaed Amanda's financial records, which revealed that her career had been in decline long before our split. Tom, the private investigator, provided evidence of Amanda's erratic behavior and false allegations. Within weeks, it was clear that Amanda's case was baseless. But the real turning point came when Sarah uncovered something even more damning. Amanda had falsified part of her lawsuit, fabricating emails and messages to make it seem like I'd been spreading rumors about her. When this was presented to the court, the judge was livid. The lawsuit was thrown out, and Amanda was ordered to pay my legal fees. It was a humiliating loss for her, and I could tell from her expression as we left the courtroom that she was finally realizing she couldn't win. But Amanda's humiliation wasn't my only victory. With Sarah's help, I filed a counterclaim for harassment and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Between her baseless accusations, her attempts to sabotage my reputation, and her stalking behavior, I had more than enough evidence to make my case. The court ruled in my favor, awarding me a significant settlement. I didn't care about the money, though it was satisfying to see Amanda forced to pay me, but it was the principle that mattered. Amanda had spent months trying to tear me down, and now she was facing the consequences of her actions. Amanda's defeat marked the end of her reign of chaos. Her financial situation, already precarious, became even worse after the settlement. She moved out of state shortly after, and from what I heard through the grapevine, she was struggling to start over. As for me, life was finally moving in the right direction. My relationship with Hannah continued to grow, and she became a steady, supportive presence in my life. I reconnected with old friends, focused on my career, and even started volunteering at a local organization that helped people rebuild after toxic relationships. It felt good to turn my pain into something positive. One evening, while Hannah and I were sitting on the porch, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. "Do you ever think about her?" "Amanda, I mean." I thought about it for a moment before answering. "Not really. She used to take up so much space in my life, my thoughts, my energy, but now, she's just part of the past. A lesson learned." Hannah smiled. "You've come a long way, Luke." And she was right. I had come a long way, not just from Amanda's betrayal, but from the person I'd been when I let her walk all over me. I was stronger now, more confident, and more at peace with myself. For a while, life was blissfully quiet. With Amanda out of the picture, I had room to focus on my future. My relationship with Hannah blossomed into something real and grounded, the kind of love I hadn't thought was possible after everything I'd been through. Olivia and Noah, my anchors throughout this storm, were thriving, their laughter filling the house with the kind of peace that had felt so elusive during my marriage to Amanda. But then, out of nowhere, Amanda reached out one last time. It was a crisp Saturday morning, and I was sorting through mail when I spotted an unfamiliar envelope. My name was scrawled across the front in handwriting I hadn't seen in months. It was Amanda's. I debated throwing it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. I tore it open and unfolded a single sheet of paper. Her words were a strange mix of apology and blame. "Luke, I've had a lot of time to think about everything that's happened. I know I made mistakes, but I also think you could have handled things differently. I never wanted to hurt you, and I hope you'll remember the good times we had instead of dwelling on the bad. I'm moving to California to start over. I hope you find peace. Amanda." I stared at the letter for a long moment, unsure of what to feel. There was no genuine remorse in her words, just a vague acknowledgement of mistakes and an attempt to rewrite history. It was classic Amanda, always deflecting, never truly owning her actions. I crumpled the letter and tossed it in the trash. Amanda's opinion of me didn't matter anymore. She was a ghost, a remnant of a life I'd left behind. The only thing her letter accomplished was solidifying what I already knew. I was better off without her. The following week, something unexpected happened. Ryan called to let me know Amanda's house, the one she had desperately tried to hold on to during the divorce, had gone up for sale. It was a small victory, but it felt symbolic. The life Amanda had clung to so fiercely was crumbling, piece by piece. In the meantime, my life was flourishing. Hannah and I took a trip to the mountains, a much-needed getaway to celebrate everything we'd overcome. Sitting by the fire one evening, she asked me a question that had been on her mind for a while. Do you ever feel like you're completely free of her? Amanda, I mean. I thought about it for a moment. I think I am, I said honestly. She used to have this power over me, like every decision I made was tied to her in some way. But now, she's just part of the past. And honestly, I'm grateful for the lessons I learned from all of it. Hannah smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for, you know? As Amanda faded further into the background, I found myself focusing more on the future. I started working with a local nonprofit that supported people recovering from toxic relationships. Sharing my story wasn't easy at first, but it felt good to help others who were going through similar struggles. If my experience could make even a small difference, then it had been worth it. One afternoon, as I was sorting through some old boxes, I came across a photo album from my marriage to Amanda. For a moment, I hesitated, unsure if I was ready to confront those memories. But when I opened it, I felt nothing. The photos were just snapshots of a life that no longer felt like mine. I closed the album and tucked it back into the box, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. Amanda was part of my story, but she no longer defined it. My life, my happiness, my future, they were mine to shape. Life had finally settled into a rhythm that felt right. Amanda's letter was the last I'd heard from her, and though it had stirred some old feelings, it ultimately reminded me of how far I'd come. I had a new life, new love, and no space for the chaos she once brought into my world. But as fate would have it, Amanda wasn't entirely gone yet. One rainy afternoon, as I was coming back from the gym, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. The voice on the other end sent a chill down my spine. Luke, it's me. Amanda. I stayed silent, gripping the phone tightly. What could she possibly want now? Before you hang up, she rushed. I just wanted to say goodbye. For real this time. I frowned. Amanda, we said everything that needed to be said months ago. What's the point of this? I know, she said, her voice softer than I remembered. I'm leaving for California tomorrow. It felt wrong to go without saying something. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm trying to change. Her words hung in the air, but I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just indifference. If that's true, I said, then I hope you do change. But your journey doesn't involve me anymore. There was a long pause, then a quiet, I know. Goodbye, Luke. I hung up without another word, feeling an unexpected sense of relief. That conversation was the final thread tying me to Amanda, and now it was severed. That evening, I told Hannah about the call. She listened without interrupting, her expression calm and thoughtful. How do you feel about it? She asked. Honestly? Free, I said. It's like she was the last weight I needed to shed. Hannah smiled, reaching for my hand. You've come so far, Luke. I'm proud of you. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into my work at the nonprofit. Helping others navigate their own toxic relationships gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I started leading support groups, sharing my story, and listening to others. It was incredible to see how much strength people could find in their darkest moments. One evening, after a particularly emotional session, a woman approached me. She looked nervous but determined. Thank you for sharing your story, she said. It's helped me more than you know. Hearing those words reminded me of why I had pushed through the pain and chaos Amanda had left behind. If my experience could help even one person, then everything I'd endured wasn't in vain. As for Amanda, I heard through the grapevine that she had moved to California and was trying to start a new life. From what I could gather, she was keeping a low profile, probably a wise choice after everything that had happened. I didn't wish her ill, but I also didn't spend much time thinking about her. She was a chapter one had closed. Hannah and I continued to grow closer, and for the first time in years, I allowed myself to dream about the future. She wasn't just my partner. She was my safe place, my anchor in a stormy sea. Together, we built a life filled with laughter, love, and trust. Everything I'd once thought was impossible. Amanda's departure marked the true end of an era. With her out of my life, I felt lighter, freer, and more grounded than ever before. For years, I had lived in the shadow of her chaos, but now, I was standing in the sunlight of my own life. Hannah and I took a road trip a few weeks after Amanda's final phone call. We packed up the car, left behind the stress of work, and spent a week exploring the countryside. The trip was a mix of adventure and reflection. Hiking trails, lazy mornings in cozy cabins, and long conversations under starry skies. For the first time in years, I felt like I was truly living, not just surviving. During one of those conversations, Hannah asked me a question that caught me off guard. Do you ever feel like you're completely healed? Or is there still a part of you holding on to the past? I thought about her question for a moment. I don't think healing is ever complete, I said honestly, but I've let go of the anger, the resentment. Amanda doesn't have power over me anymore, and that feels like enough. Hannah smiled, her eyes soft. You're incredible, you know that? For the first time in years, I believed her. The nonprofit work continued to be a major part of my life. Helping others navigate the pain of betrayal and toxic relationships gave me a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Each person I helped felt like a small victory, a reminder that even the darkest moments can lead to something meaningful. One day, a young man named Ben approached me after a support group meeting. He looked nervous, his hands fidgeting as he spoke. I just wanted to say thank you, he said. Hearing your story, it made me realize I don't have to stay in a situation that's hurting me. Hearing those words filled me with a mix of pride and humility. My journey hadn't been easy, but knowing it could inspire others made it all worth it. In the meantime, my relationship with Hannah continued to flourish. We weren't in a rush to define things or make big commitments, but there was an undeniable sense of stability and trust between us. She was patient, kind, and completely unlike Amanda in all the best ways. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, Hannah turned to me with a thoughtful expression. Where do you see us in 5 years? She asked. The question caught me off guard, but not in a bad way. For the first time in years, I could picture a future that wasn't clouded by doubt or chaos. I see us happy, I said simply. Whatever that looks like, as long as we're together. She smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. I like the sound of that. Every now and then, I'd hear whispers about Amanda, how she was struggling to rebuild her life, how she'd burned bridges with people who once supported her. But I didn't dwell on it. Amanda's life was no longer my concern, and I refused to let her take up space in my mind. The final piece of closure came unexpectedly. One afternoon, while sorting through old documents, I stumbled upon a photo album from my marriage to Amanda. Flipping through the pages, I felt a strange sense of detachment. The memories were there, but they didn't sting anymore. They were just snapshots of a life I'd outgrown. I closed the album and put it away, feeling lighter than I had in years. Amanda was a chapter in my story, but she didn't define it. My life, my happiness, and my future were mine to shape, and I was doing just that. As I sat down to reflect on everything that had happened, I realized just how much my life had changed. What started as a devastating betrayal had turned into the catalyst for the kind of growth I never thought I was capable of. The pain, the anger, and the chaos were all part of the process that led me here. To peace, to love, to happiness. Amanda was nothing more than a memory now, a figure in the background of my story. Her choices and actions had left scars, but they also taught me invaluable lessons about resilience, boundaries, and self-worth. I used to wonder why I had to go through such heartbreak, but now I see it clearly. Without her betrayal, I wouldn't be the person I am today. Hannah and I celebrated our 1-year anniversary with a quiet dinner at home. The simplicity of it was a stark contrast to the grand gestures Amanda had always demanded. But that's what made it perfect. It was real, effortless, and filled with genuine connection. After dinner, we sat on the couch, and I found myself reaching for her hand. "You've changed my life. You know that?" I said. She smiled, her eyes soft with emotion. "I didn't change it, Luke. You did that. I'm just lucky to be part of it." The nonprofit work continued to be a major part of my life. I had started mentoring others who were navigating toxic relationships, sharing my story and helping them find their way to freedom and healing. Each success story reminded me that even the darkest chapters can lead to something meaningful. One day, during a group session, someone asked me, "How did you get through it? How did you move on from someone who hurt you so much?" I thought about the question for a moment before answering. "I stopped letting them control my story," I said. "For a long time, I let Amanda's actions define me. I let her lies and manipulations dictate how I saw myself. But once I realized I had the power to rewrite my own narrative, everything changed. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing to focus on what's ahead instead of what's behind." That answer felt like the culmination of everything I'd learned. Amanda had tried to break me, but in the end, I was stronger for it. The scars she left were reminders not of pain, but of resilience. As for Amanda, I heard she was still trying to piece her life back together. She'd moved to California, started a new job, and kept a low profile. I didn't wish her ill, but I didn't wish her back into my life either. She was part of my past, a lesson, a chapter, but not the whole story. Hannah and I eventually moved in together, blending our lives in a way that felt seamless and natural. She wasn't just my partner. She was my best friend, my confidant, and the person who reminded me every day that love doesn't have to hurt. One evening, as we were unpacking boxes in our new home, I came across the old photo album from my marriage to Amanda. I hesitated for a moment, then handed it to Hannah. "What do you want to do with this?" she asked. I thought about it for a moment. "Let's toss it," I said. "It's time to make room for new memories." She nodded, and together, we placed it in the trash. It felt symbolic, like I was finally letting go of the last remnants of that chapter. If there's one thing I've learned through all of this, it's that pain doesn't have to define you. Betrayal hurts, but it also reveals truths about who you are and what you deserve. It forces you to grow, to set boundaries, and to demand better for yourself. To anyone out there who's going through something similar, I want you to know this. You're stronger than you think. You're capable of healing, of finding happiness, and of building a life you're proud of. Don't let someone else's choices define your worth. Rewrite your story. Hannah and I are starting a new chapter now, one filled with love, trust, and hope. The road here wasn't easy, but it was worth every step. And for the first time in years, I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving.